Yeah, there were weird, eerie messages from like his mom online and forums too, talking about like she worries about her kid and stuff like that. You wonder if the intuition was there. And this was another situation where like the dad was being questioned because there's a famous body cam.
And, you know, I think probably Ethan Chapin was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I think
that's just literally my own opinion.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And it goes into the theme I was getting at there. It's just some sort of like pent up anger. There was another case, I forget the guy's name, but they mentioned in that documentary another case of like the incel killer from a few years before who had been a serial killer for the same reasons, and there were a lot of the same kind of patterns. Like, oh, fuck you, you're not gonna pick me, then I'm gonna kill you guys.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, people joke about, oh, make friends with that kid because he'd be the school shooter or whatever. But like, you do, unfortunately, in society now have to be vigilant at people who seem off around you. And, you know, I don't know if you can change outcomes, but, you know, do your little part to try to make someone feel seen, because you don't know if like one little ripple effect can change somebody. I'm not saying it does. You know, if someone's truly sick, then they're just sick. But it does seem like he was always just kind of cast off and then probably played himself into that role for a long time.
Well, and like the whole part of him getting his PhD in criminology.
Yeah.
And then he got his master's in criminology and you know, studying death scenes and studying serial killers, and even at one point trying to do a survey to get into the mind of criminals and killers. So there's also that side of it. Like, you know, did he hate women? But I think it's probably a combination, but I think he also wanted to see what it would feel like to do that.
Yes.
After studying these people so much. And I've interviewed none of his professors in you know, he went to Washington State University, which is right near where it happened in Idaho, have spoken. But one of his professors in Pennsylvania, Dr. Catherine Ramsland, who is like the world's premier serial killer expert. Mm-hmm. She was his advisor in Pennsylvania. And I did an interview with her after the sentencing or after the plea deal. And, you know, it's just weird, like to think that she's spent her whole life studying serial killers and now one of her students ended up being this guy.
Yeah, Joseph talked about that because he's a professor. Scott Morgan.
Yeah.
And has been a long time professor now. And he's like, it could happen. You know, when someone, that's why you got to pay attention and try to see like, what, and that's kind of a weird question, the way they asked that. But again, it's another situation where it's like hindsight 2020. Her job was to take people, in this case, they literally had like a dummy house.
They did.
Where they could recreate things. And her student's job is to ask those kinds of questions. So it's like, what the fuck?
But she said it's always in the back of your mind. Like, is there going to be one who's got bad intentions? Because you're teaching them how all of this works.
Did she feel guilty?
I don't know if guilty is the right word. I think she felt like, wow, this guy got one over me. Like I'm the world's expert on this. And she didn't see it, she said. You know, she didn't ever suspect it. It's interesting, when he was in Pennsylvania, you know, there weren't that many stories from when he was in school about him being weird or him being awful to women. It was after he moved and to get his PhD in Washington State, it seemed like something changed. You know, there were all sorts of police reports that we were able to get of people who were interviewed, colleagues and people in his PhD program who were really scared of him, who really, they thought he was stalking them outside their house at night, women. I mean, all sorts of crazy stuff when he got to Washington. And I wonder, like, he's very close to his parents, his mom. I don't know if like something changed when he moved away.
I could see that.
You know?
Yeah, it's like he always had the one kind of home base.
Yeah, or maybe that kept him in line a little bit, you know?
Yeah, there were weird, eerie messages from like his mom online and forums too, talking about like she worries about her kid. And stuff like that. You wonder if the intuition was there. And this was another situation where like the dad was being questioned because there's the famous body cam footage of, you know, the two of them driving across the country. They got stopped for speeding like twice. And it's like, it was after the murder. He went and like picked him up and Washington. Then
They were driving back for Christmas break from Washington across the whole country, which a lot of people always thought was weird. Like, why wouldn't you just get a flight? Why would he want to bring the car back? And there's all sorts of theories about, whatever. But yeah, people also thought, like, were they tracking them at that time? And that was secretly like the FBI just trying to keep an eye on him when he was driving back. But they've since said that's not the case. It was just coincidence that he got pulled over twice. Right. I think it was in Indiana.
Right. And then wasn't it like his sister thought, because he had two sisters, they're all home for Christmas with the family, and then his sisters thought something was off and thought he might have something to do with it?
Yeah, so I never was able to confirm that, but there's been reporting, like NBC reported that one of the sisters was suspicious of him cleaning the car, just doing weird things, and knew about, what had happened with the murders and may have suspected him. So yeah, it's weird. And like, again, all this stuff is coming out now. I mean, we got his cell phone history, and he was on the phone with his mom for hours the morning after the murders. There's a lot of unanswered questions still that we may just never know. People don't realize, I mean, he didn't have to clear all this up to plead guilty. All he had to do was check a box.
Well, that's another thing. You got very close with the Gonzalez family. There were obviously 4 different victims here, 4 different families. That family in particular was very incensed about the prosecutors cutting a deal with Kohberger. Now, they did get to have their day in court to address him, and they all did an amazing job, by the way. But, the other families, some of them, like the Chapins in particular, seemed to be happy that it was closed off. Well, was there a weird dynamic there with the families having a disagreement on how this was handled?
Yeah, it was kind of weird a couple of times. I mean, they were always respectful to each other, like in public. But I think, I mean, you had just a difference of opinion, like the Chapins were always very focused on Ethan and remembering him. And they never really were that interested in talking about the case or about Brian Kohberger. And they were okay with the plea deal. They didn't come to the sentencing. They went to I think, out on a lake to remember Ethan that day. So it was just a different way of grieving. And the Gonzalez's were just like, they were just like fighters from the beginning. Like that was, I mean, even the first time I met Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee Gonzalez's dad, it was like he was mad at the police. They weren't doing enough fast enough. He was, you know what I mean? And then he was mad at I think that's just his way of grieving, of coping, of, you know what I mean?
Yes. And, I can't imagine how you would handle that, but it seemed like at the crux of it, they were upset that he was now going to have the option to not have to explain why he did this. Yeah. But if it went to trial and he doesn't testify in his own defense, which he has a right to remain silent, would he have ever explained it? You know what I mean?
He may not have. I think they were frustrated though, because there was just this, there was this feeling in some ways that people in Idaho, that the Moscow, Idaho, the town where this happened, a lot of people just kind of wanted to get this over with. Didn't really want there to be a trial. I mean, the fact that they tore the house down so quickly, they wanted to get the college town back to normal. That was weird. The first judge on the case, like, clearly didn't even want to be on the case and like wanted to get off of it. And I think the Gonzalez's just felt like, everybody just wanted to wipe their hands at this thing. Like, let's just get it over with. Whereas they were like, wait a minute, we want to know everything. We want all the details to come out. Like, we don't want to just rush this along.
Yeah. It's just like looking at it. I would not want to be a fly on the wall in the conversations the victims' families had to have together, because they all have the same end result here, which is that they've all had the worst thing happen and they've lost a kid. But, there's, on the one hand, I really respect like the fighter aspect of the Gonzalez's. And then also at the same time, like, I totally respect this. I would describe it as like the unbelievable strength of like the Chapin family, like listening to them talk on that James Patterson documentary. They were, kudos to them on how they've handled this. So there's like, they're polar opposites in a way, but I understand and respect both. And then, like I was saying, you did an interview with Olivia Gonzalez. That's her name. So that's the sister.
That's Kaylee's sister.
Sister. She gave a pretty unbelievable victim impact statement.
She did.
In court. How did the family whether it was Steve or Olivia or just in general, how did the family feel after they at least got to say their piece in court to him?
I think they felt relief. I know they went into that, they were told, don't make eye contact with him, don't address him.
Who's telling them that?
Like the court, there's these victim advocates, like you can make your statement, but don't make eye contact with him. This is not to address him. And they basically went in like, we're breaking the rules immediately. Like when Steve went first, I don't know if you noticed, he immediately literally turned the podium towards him. And then Olivia has said she went in thinking like, I might get arrested for this. Cause like they were doing everything they were told not to do, but they felt like they had to do that. And Olivia's whole intention was like, I think everybody knows that I love my sister. This isn't a moment to remember my sister. This is like a moment to try to get under his skin because this might be our only chance. You know what I mean? Yeah. And to take the power back. Like they felt like for so long that he had the power. In a way he did. I mean, the defense was fighting every little thing. It all got delayed year after year. They'd have to take off work to drive to these hearings constantly. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was like finally they wanted to like reclaim some of that power in that moment with him. And I think they did. I mean, I think they did. And you mentioned like all the families were different and they had different ways of dealing with this.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.